am an architect by trade, but tonight I'm going to try and be a moderator. I welcome everyone to this event put on by Cedar Rapids Chapter Order of DeMolay. I'll explain a little bit about what DeMolay is in a second. And first off, I want to thank wholeheartedly our panel. We have 7 different religions represented. Fortunately, for the flyer, Judaism and Roman Catholic were not able to participate this evening. All the priests in the area for the Roman Catholics have a special reconciliation tonight, so representatives were a little thin for them tonight. But the things that we discussed tonight are certainly applicable to them and all religions as well. So, for starters, again, as an architect, I always look for a few things when I first go into a building for the first time. Number one is the restrooms. They are through the lobby. The women's is the first one on the right, and the men's is all the way down on the right before you get to the library for the other set of double doors. The drinking fountains are just past the women's restroom, and the exits are conveniently located at the rear of the dining room and at the lobby and through the kitchen, provided that's not on fire in case of emergency. So, all right. Buckle your seatbelts. Tonight is about respect and respecting other people's feelings. This is not a debate over theology itself, so please let the speakers finish. We need to get, there'll be a time towards the end for questions. Please keep in mind that you're trying to get an answer without starting a fight. And think and be open to new thinking. That's the theme of the night. I'm not saying that anybody's going to be mean or anything. We're all here to agree with each other. So a quick introduction to the Order of DeMolay. It is a young man's organization. If all the young men, board members, could raise their hand real quick. We have a few back here, a couple back there. And some of them, some days, look like this. Tonight they don't. But sometimes they do. So if you think for a moment about a young man who is somewhere between the ages of 12 and 21. He's probably a good young man. He might be from any faith background. He may be from any social status or any socioeconomic status. And in DeMolay, we try to teach 2 major things: leadership and character. The character comes from 3 bulwarks: religious liberty, civil liberty, and intellectual liberty. The 3 sources of our country's greatness, but they must stand alone on separate foundations and under separate roofs. Also, for character, we have what we call the precepts or the virtues, the 7 cardinal virtues, which are filial love, or love of parents, reverence for sacred things, courtesy, comradeship, fidelity or loyalty, cleanness, and patriotism. Part of our initiation focuses specifically on loyalty and toleration. And so tonight, and the whole month of March, we're focusing on religions in the area. We're planning our capstone event tonight as a discussion forum with religious leaders from the area. And the goal is to learn a little bit about each religion, highlight commonalities and beauties in each faith, and better understand differences which may exist. Our hope is that attendees will gain a better understanding of other belief systems and a sense of growing harmony in our community. This is the 2nd preceptor, or reverence for sacred things. I place in the crown of youth, this is the crown of youth, right here, the jewel of reverence for sacred things. As we are all sons of earthly parents, so are we children of the universal Father. My brothers, in our chapter, we teach no religious creed. Your religious opinions are your own. But we do earnestly enjoin upon you the sacredness of faith, the beauty of a humble reliance on the goodness of God. Let us strive to be true to this universal sonship. The world respects most of all the young man who has strong religious convictions, and who has the courage of a high moral standard based on the profound acknowledgement of the fact that from God all earthly blessings flow. I enjoin you to delight in the companionship of the devout. Not only to frequent the holy places of worship, but to carry their teachings into your daily lives. May this jewel shine brighter and brighter until the perfect day. So you might think, where does the Order of DeMolay get their name? And it is based off of a character in history named Jacques DeMolay, who was the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar. And the Knights Templar, they got into some accusations by the King of France. And ultimately, Jacques DeMolay stood up for his brethren, and he stood up for what he believed in. And had he encountered toleration, he would not have been burned at the stake. So since the time that DeMolay was started in 1919, there have been several, actually many very famous DeMolays, including William Shire, who was author of The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, who's actually a member of Cedar Rapids chapter. But also athletes such as Bob Mathias, Frank Tarkenton, newsman Dan Rather, a few astronauts, a guy named Walter Cronkite, Burl Ives, Paul Harvey, Mel Blanc, voice of Bugs Bunny, Tom Osborne, senator, football coach, and sometimes Pete Rose and Bill Clinton. Also in that time, Buddy Ibsen, several actors, Lloyd Bridges, baseball player Harmon Killebrew, John Wayne was a DeMolay, John Cougar Mellencamp was a DeMolay, Alice Cooper was also a DeMolay, The Undertaker was also a DeMolay. Willard Scott is pretty famously DeMolay. So Walter Barber, Bill Bradley, basketball player, John Steinbeck was a DeMolay. Some guy named Walt Disney was a DeMolay. And the only non-living, non-human DeMolay was Mickey Mouse. And here's a cartoon that someone who worked at Walt Disney Studios put together of a chapter meeting. This is where the DeMolays meet. You say that looks pretty terrible, but this is how it was given to us. And through some donations and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears by the boys, they turned it into this. So it's on the third floor. It'll be open for tours after the meeting. We actually just meet on the first Thursdays as there's a business meeting, and we have other activities on other Thursdays. But ultimately, DeMolay serves the community. We participate in clothing drives and trash cleanups and help in the flood work. We learn and demonstrate through public speaking, fundraising for our own events, and participating in civic activities like visiting civic landmarks. DeMolay also has a lot of fun. That is actually an ice cream gutter there that they're eating out of. Capture the flag, ultimate frisbee is pretty hot that day. This is a life-size Monopoly. We like to get creative with our fun that the boys created. This is a sports tournament, Colonel's game, and the lower right is a cookie baking contest. I think the 1,000-pound dressing cookie lost that night. So that brings us to that's a little introduction about DeMolay, and these are our panelists. They'll be going from right to left if I got the PowerPoint straightened out correctly. And the way that we're formatting is each speaker will get 7 minutes to discuss hundreds and possibly thousands of years of their religion. So I am glad they stuck with me and didn't bail out after what might feel to some people as being shortchanged. But ultimately, it's to get a flavor of everything that's in our community. Let's see. Then the second half of the evening, which will be probably about an hour from now, we'll have two major discussion topics, which we'll get to in a little while, and then we'll open it up for any questions. I believe each panelist will be available a little bit afterwards if anybody has any specific questions that don't necessarily pertain to the entire group. So with that, we'll start with Jeff Breer, who is a representative from People's Church, Unitarian Universalist.
Good evening, my name is Jeff Breer. I am the interim minister at People's Church. Interim indicates a time between. I am serving the church between the time of the last minister, who was called to another church, and the time of the next one. I want to thank the DeMolay for producing the event this evening. I want to talk first about the name Unitarian Universalist. Say it with me now. There's 10 syllables. Unitarian Universalist. So many people shorten that to Unitarian. That's not insulting. I just want you to know there's more to it. The Unitarian Universalists are great deniers. The name Unitarian is derived from unity because Unitarians denied originally the existence of the Trinity. They could just not accept such an irrational concept. Even today, people who accept the Trinity refer to it as a mystery, and indeed it is. Unitarians believe in the unity of God. And the implication, if you follow that philosophical line of reasoning to its end, the implication is that Jesus is then a human being. The name Universalist is derived from universe, because Universalists denied the existence of hell. They could not believe that a loving God would consign his creatures to an eternal torment. They believed in universal salvation. That is, that everyone sooner or later would be reunited in happiness with their Creator. And the implication of this, if you follow it to its logical conclusion, is that there is nothing to be saved from. Therefore, Jesus does not need be a divine creature. And as Kyle indicated, I'm going to simplify history a little bit here. Both Unitarians and Universalists got their start at the first 100 years after Jesus died. Unitarians were declared heretics at the Council of Nicaea in 325, and Universalists got the same treatment at the Second Council of Constantinople in 553. So hey, look at me, I'm a heretic. Yeah, now you know one. But Unitarians and Universalists survived to create the Universalist Church in America in 1790 and the American Unitarian Association in 1825. Both these organizations were creations of the late Enlightenment period and were purely American in origin. They merged in 1961 to form the Unitarian Universalist Association. Unitarian Universalism is an expression of Christianity. An expression of Christianity, one among thousands. Though through about 1930, we were an explicitly Christian faith, but after that we were influenced by Judaism, Native American missions, Asian religions, and many others. If you look at our churches, if you look at our worship services, you would recognize right away that we are an outgrowth of the Protestant Reformation. An alien from another planet, knowing nothing of religions in America or the rest of the world, would find little difference in appearance between us and the Presbyterians, the Methodists, or even the Episcopals. Today, Unitarian Universalists proclaim no doctrine, none whatsoever. There is no creedal test to become a member of a Unitarian Universalist society. We believe that people ought to make up their own minds about religious matters, and we hold each other to account for that. We are not bound by a doctrine of belief. We are bound together by shared values and a covenant of behavior, an agreement to walk together. In our societies, there are people who will identify themselves as Jews, as Buddhists, as Christians, as Muslims, pagans, as humanists, atheists, or agnostics. Now, you might argue with those people as to whether they are true Christians or Buddhists or whatever, but people, they tend to believe that religions are exclusive. To some, they may be, but not to Unitarian Universalists. What's more important to us is whether people are being true to the spiritual path that they walk. Generally, I believe that the path ought not be criticized so much as the way one walks it. We are liberal, for the most part, and our societies have been on the leading edge of social change since we began. In the matter of who can be ordained as a minister, the Universalists were the first to ordain a woman in 1853. The Unitarians followed in 1871. We were among the first, if not the first, to ordain gay men and women to the ministry and promote the acceptance of marriage equality. In years past and today, we advance the causes, social justice causes, such as equal pay for equal work, peacemaking, abolitionism, temperance, civil rights, and the full inclusion of gay and transgender men and women into mainstream societies, and the unfettered access to reproductive health care as defined by the woman who needs it. Throughout our history, our societies have have upheld three values. The right of conscience, that is, religious freedom. Religious freedom. The time was you had to believe as the king believed. We believe in religious freedom. That's a very common concept these days, but when this country was founded, it was very new. The other two values that we have upheld through our history are tolerance and acceptance of other religions and the use of reason in religious matters. The Universalists first established churches in Iowa in 1843. My church was established in 1869, and the Unitarians first established a church in Iowa in 1875. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, next we'll have Reverend Sherry Hill from St. Paul's United Methodist.
Hello, good to be here. Well, let's see, what do we want to know about the United Methodist Church? The United Methodist Church is a Christian denomination, and that begins with Jesus Christ and followers of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ was a man that walked the earth about 2,000 or so years ago, and people had to figure out, what do we do about this Jesus Christ? Who do I believe this Jesus Christ is? Man, God, followers of Jesus Christ that saw Jesus as fully man and fully human began to be called Christians, people that followed and believed in Christ as divine and fully human. And through Christ's birth and life and death and resurrection and ascension, that word was that I will not leave you alone, but I will send someone in my absence as your advocate, as your counselor, as the Holy Spirit, as what we would know as the Holy Spirit. So we see God as a triune God, a mystery, as you mentioned, a Father and Son and the Holy Spirit together. That would be our understanding of God. And the United Methodist Church then grew as the followers of Christ were together for hundreds of years. There was a time when understandings were challenged, understandings of Scripture, the writings that have been in place after the time of Christ, and there were some divisions within the believers. So it was in the 1700s that the origins of our particular denomination came to life. The United Methodist Church has its roots in the Church of England, the Anglican Church, the Church of England there, and their roots were with the Roman Catholics as well as others in the Reformation time. And so it was in the 1700s that a man named John Wesley and his brother Charles wanted to have they felt a need for a reform within the church, to live faith authentically, to study Scripture, to understand it, and also to live that in ways that would advocate and care for the poor, visiting those in prison, importance of education for those that might not have access to education. So there was this parallel theme of personal devotion as well as working for social justice. And those two have always been characteristics of how we see the love of Christ being lived out in the world. It came to the United States simply as a movement, and yet when the Americans were in a war, a revolution war with England, we kind of parted ways with those in England, and it became its own religion. Our name was Methodist Episcopal Church, and throughout hundreds of years, in 1968, we joined with the Evangelical Brethren to become the United Methodist Church. Our church has had different segments in it based on language. So as people came to the United States, if you spoke German, there were groups that spoke German, and the Czech population here in Cedar Rapids had its own connections, as well as other languages. And so today we are a large Protestant denomination, and we kind of grew like wildfire in the United States as settlers came, if there was a town, you probably would find someone riding on a horse, a circuit rider, that would establish a group of people that would gather together and discuss faith and worship together. So we grew quickly and became quite numerous throughout the United States. In Iowa, I understand that the first person was crossing the river, the Mississippi River, and in Dubuque in 1833, a man became active in leading the Methodist tradition here. In 1950, we had people in the Cedar Rapids area that crossed the river and began to worship together. They built a log cabin. I understand it's where the 3rd Avenue parking lot is right now. So that was a little cabin at the beginnings of our congregation started. So our congregation, let's see, we met there, then they built another church about 30 years later where Waypoint is right now in Cedar Rapids. So that was the location of the second building. Then in the early 1900s, they said, you know what, let's buy some land way out in the outskirts of town, you know, like where the circus grounds was. And that's where we are today, which is like 2nd and 3rd Avenue and 14th Street, where we're located today. That was the edge of town in Cedar Rapids, and you can still see a plaque that the circus ticket office is across the street from our church. So we have been a congregation here in Cedar Rapids for 176 years, and the building that we currently worship in, we've just celebrated 100 years last year, so 101 years in our present location. Some of our core beliefs, I mentioned, belief in the Trinity or the Triune God. Some things that are distinct about Wesley followers in the Methodist tradition would be that we look at a theology of grace. So we believe that God is at work in our lives before we even recognize it, that God is pursuing us. And we talk about prevenient grace. And as we understand God to be true and real for our own self, and offer ourselves, we understand that we are justified or made right with God through justification. But that's not the end of the story. It takes a lifetime as we continue to walk and journey and seek to understand faith. And God's grace continues to work in our life. We understand that as sanctification, or sanctifying grace. Those would be some of the core beliefs that I would share with you, and many more. So we'll stop there. Okay?
Next we have Pastor Emery Gillespie from Westminster Presbyterian.
It's a great privilege to be here. I'm here because of Joey. Joey invited me, and I'm so grateful for that. Joey is a member of our church, Westminster. We're the one across from the Methodist church. We look like a White Castle. I keep thinking we should be handing out hamburgers, White Castle hamburgers. And I understand that the reason our lot is so unusual, it's really kind of hard to get there because there's so many one-way streets going the wrong way, that was the racetrack at the fair. Did you hear that too, Joey? See, Joey knows more about the church than I do. It's fantastic. So he jumped in, he moved back here and became the acolyte. He just put on the robe and got the candle lit. And he said, "You just follow me, and I'll show you what to do." So that was great. And I think it's a screen that there's a picture of me with that lamb puppet. The people in Mount Vernon, at the Mount Vernon Presbyterian Church, they really loved Lammy. He doesn't like this, you know. I tried Lammy at this church. They did not like it at all. A lot of people laughed about it, but other people said, "Could Lammy, go away?" And so I just think it's a screen that you've got that picture up there. I think I'm just going to tell you a story in terms of tolerance and those kinds of things. Just a little bit about me growing up. When I was about your age, when I was about 12 years old, I thought I had it all figured out. I went to a you need to believe in Jesus Christ. Because I wanted my dog to go to heaven with me, which was kind of nuts. Now that was back when I was like second grade. But when I was your age, after Billy Graham, I actually went knocking on doors with these tracts that said, these little booklets that said, I know what's wrong with you, and I invite you to believe in this loving God, or else, and then these flames will, or else you're going to go burn in hell forever. And I thought people would be really grateful to me for that, that I had helped to save them. At some point, I ended up going to school after college, and at that point, I still was just kind of playing the piano and the organ. I couldn't read very well, to be honest, and I faked my way through school a lot because I was just good at listening. But I had a hard time reading. And when I was at seminary, so I'm at seminary studying to be like a youth minister. So I'm there, and rumors spread around like the first couple of weeks that there was a woman there who was lesbian. She was in a small group. Now, the small groups, we'd all promised that we weren't going to say anything about anything that was said in our small group. So all of a sudden, apparently a woman has told her small group that she's a lesbian, and it has just hit the school like a fire. Well, I knew who it was because we didn't have very many women at school. She was my best friend. I just made friends with her, Dee Dee, and so here we are, best friends. We've been together for a couple of weeks. I have learned that she's lesbian, and so now I've cut my friendship with her completely. I was like, you are weird, and I'm not going to spend any more time with you because I know that you are gay. So forget that. So I dumped her like a sack of potatoes and went off with some other new friends. And Dee Dee kept coming by going, why aren't you talking to me? Why aren't you playing with me? Why aren't you hanging out with me? And I was like, I'm not going to get whatever. I'm not going to tell you why. So meanwhile, I started making other friends, and there was some guys there, another woman there, and this other woman, I followed her. She was doing soup kitchens. She was doing homeless shelters. She was up all night taking care of very poor people, inner city Atlanta. And so I started hanging out with her, and I thought, now this is a real Christian. She's really doing the work. And while I was visiting with her one time, I still remember it's one of those things where you feel like you're stung by 1,000 wasps, I was looking at her, and she had a necklace on, and it was two women linked together. And I looked at this necklace and realized she was the lesbian at school. And here she was doing all this amazing work. I mean, I still remember just staring at this necklace going, it's kind of like one of those images in a movie where the camera just comes right at you, like Home Alone, Wait. This woman is the lesbian. And Dee Dee, that I just cut out of my life, is not the lesbian. And all of a sudden, it just felt like all the lights were on me. And I had just been so horribly judgmental, and I felt just cruddy. I guess the good news about the church I'm in is that finally, after so many years, our church just a week ago voted to have same-sex marriages. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? Well, that means a lot of Presbyterians are going to leave our congregation over that. We've got churches, you just look in the paper, it's going to be happening left and right, where whole churches will vote and say, we're out of here. But thanks to this woman, way back when, who demonstrated for me a deep love, I'm jumping up and down with joy about this decision. So thanks, Joey.
Next we have Imam Hassan Mahmood from the Cedar Rapids Islamic Center.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I would like to start by saying that that English is not my first language, so I might make mistakes, and they might be inappropriate sometimes. I was told in many other places that I was speaking at. So if I make any mistakes, please feel free to stop me and just correct me or something like that. English, obviously, is not my first language. I speak Arabic as a first language. And then the other thing I want to mention, I just was taking some notes, is I love your microphone. Please tell me, where did you get this from? Because we have a very bad microphone in my congregation, and it requires me to speak very loudly and really hurt my voice. So thank you for having this. And then the second note I was taking, I just realized I participated in the Egyptian Revolution that took place in the year 11, sorry. And if you've been following the news, lots of accusation was given to the youth, the young people that participated in the revolution, that they were paid by the Masons, the Freemasons, to just fake the revolution and just overthrew the Egyptian regime. So I don't know, maybe you've heard this, maybe you have not, but you have no idea how happy I am to be here today. I'm going to call all of my friends in Egypt tonight and just tell them that, none of the things that were being told about us in the media were right, and I was just, so. To start speaking about Islam, Islam is a continuation of the Abrahamic religions, of the Abrahamic tradition, and the word Islam is being translated and introduced in many places, and maybe you have done research before, as meaning submission, and that's a word that has very negative connotation because it's taken out of its context. Islam in Arabic language means to peacefully surrender, which when you take surrender out of the context also has a negative connotation. But it means to peacefully surrender to the will and mercy of God and to live in peace with your oneself, surroundings, and other people. So that's what the word really means. And the Prophet of Islam, anything that Muslims do, say, or believe comes from two sources. The first is called Quran, and that's pretty much like the Bible for Christians, the Old Testament and the New Testament. Also, we have the second source, it's called the Sunnah. Sunnah is the prophetic teachings of Prophet Muhammad. We believe Prophet Muhammad to be the seal of prophethood. We believe also in all the prophets that were sent from the time of Adam and until Muhammad. About, if I remember correctly, 124 different prophets were sent to just different civilizations and groups of people. So Quran and Sunnah are the two sources of our tradition and religion. To speak a little bit about Islam in Iowa, specifically in Cedar Rapids, late 1800s, and early 1900s were the first immigrants that came to the state of Iowa, and specifically to the city of Cedar Rapids. They came as merchants. They were not here for any other reason other than just having an opportunity for living and starting a new life. I always make the joke that because the families that came here originally were from Lebanon and Syria, and I always make the joke that they were originally going to South America, but there were a few families that got lost and ended up here. Because the word Iowa, seriously, in Arabic, it means yes. And so when they landed in America, they were asking them where they want to go, and they were saying Iowa, meaning just yes, of course, so we're out of here. And they just ended up sending them to Iowa by chance, which is very interesting because this is how I met my wife also in Egypt. My wife was born and raised here in America, and then we met in Egypt because of a misunderstanding where she said she's from Iowa, and I thought that she's saying yes. So it's very fortunate for me. It's very fortunate for me. So approximately we have about 2.1% of the residents in the Lake County are Muslims. They are all over the place, Muslims, but really they are very shy. They kind of quiet about their religion because of the stereotypes stereotypes that we have in the media and so on and so forth. And so they kind of keep quiet about their religion. And I can explain more about this later, about the stereotypes. We have the Friday service instead of the Sunday service or the Saturday. It's Friday service. It's called Jumu'ah, which can be translated roughly to mean gatherings. Worship really means a lot in Islam if it was done within a group. So prayers, if it was done within a group, it has great benefit. Fasting, if it was done with a group, has great benefit, and so on. It's very important to belong to a group, to a community. Also, we have. I'm sorry, I'm relying on the slides. So we have what we call the 5 pillars of Islam. These are the main acts of worship that every practicing Muslim would do. It will start with something that one vocal, something one says when they become Muslims. The testimony of faith. They say there's no God but God, and Muhammad was his messenger. And then they start praying 5 times a day, which means like a lot, and it is. But eventually it pays off and kind of help one spiritually. And then one has to contribute to the community by paying their obligatory alms or zakat, what we call zakat. Not the cat, it's a one word, zakat. A lot of people get confused about it when they become Muslims and I start explaining them, and you have to pay zakat. They say, no, I love my cat, I cannot pay my cat. I say, no, you don't have to pay your cat. It's called zakat, it's a one word thing. And then one has to fast for an entire month. Wonderful experience. Seems horrible when you God, you just fast for an entire month, no eat, no food, nothing. Yes, but it's a very wonderful spiritual experience when one actually starts doing so. And then finally, there's finally the what we call the Hajj, or the pilgrimage to Mecca. A lot of Muslims save up for this to end their lives with a wonderful journey to the city of Mecca. I think my time is up. Thank you very much for having me here. Okay, I think I was giving some more time. Thank you for that. That's very generous of you. We have the 2 main feasts, or what we call Eid, E-I-D. These are like Christmas, if I may use an example to bring it closer. They are very much like Christmas without the tree and the presents and the gifts. I wish that we had gifts. The first Eid is what we celebrate right after we are done with the fasting. So you fast for an entire month. The last day we've done it, and then the next morning we do a communal prayers. People usually wear new clothes and just greet one another, and usually eat a meal in the morning just to declare that the fasting has been done. And then the second one is a couple of months after this, where we celebrate the story of Abraham. He was trying to sacrifice his son. On the difference of which son between the different traditions is not really a point to really discuss. But Abraham trusted God and trusted the mercy of God, and so we celebrate this. And it's a great reason of sacrificing that we celebrate every year. It's kind of a tough time of the year for me, even though it's like a festival and everyone should be happy. But because we have to sacrifice an animal, and it has to be done in a certain ritual way, and then the entire congregation comes to me and they want me to help, with the blessing and sacrificing the animal and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I end up with a freezer full of Lego flames and stuff like this. It's a good thing for me, at least. So yeah, these are the two holidays that we have. To become a Muslim, the only requirement is to recite the testimony of faith that I have mentioned in the 5 pillars of Islam, saying there is no God but God, and Muhammad is or was his messenger. And then that's pretty much it. When you become a Muslim, you are either called reverts or converts. A lot of people say, no, we are called reverts because we were born as Muslims, because Muslims need submission. So when we are born with a state of submission already. So that's pretty much, I think that's pretty much it. I'm sorry, I went to another. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Next is Reverend Dr. Father Peter Andernacki from St. John the Baptist, Greek Orthodox, just across the street.
that my voice can actually last through the whole service. That being said, Orthodoxy in 7 minutes, and that would be impossible by me. So, the Orthodox Church. Historically, there's often been said that the church began at Pentecost, and I chose a Romanian icon because I was born in Romania, but that's neither here nor there. I set up the Greek church, and that's neither here nor there. Anyway. So, historically, the idea that the church had started at Pentecost has been fairly common, with the descent of the Holy Spirit upon the apostles. However, the church, the Orthodox Church, views herself as the continuation of the Judean faith. So we consider as saints the prophet David, Abraham, who was just mentioned in the presentation of Islam, Noah. So we view the church as actually being an eternal, I don't want to say an institution because it is definitely more than that, but we do view the church as being something eternal. So that's going back, coming forward. Where did Orthodoxy come to Iowa from? And in Eastern Europe, especially in the right half of that map that you see over there, Orthodoxy is the majority religion. So in Romania, Bulgaria, Ukraine, Belarus, the Russian Federation, and Greece, the bottom of Serbia, the former Yugoslav Republic, most of the former Yugoslav republics. And also there are significant Orthodox minorities in parts of the Middle East, in particular in Syria and Lebanon, some in Palestine, some a little bit in Turkey. And as the United States has historically been the place where people have come to look for opportunity, people from those countries came here, and some of them ended up in Iowa. And today right now there are actually 3 Orthodox churches, well, 4, but we can discuss that separately. But there are 3 Orthodox churches in Cedar Rapids. Ours is right across the street, St. John the Baptist Greek Orthodox Church. There is St. George Antiochian Orthodox Church down on Cottage Grove, and there's a newly started Russian mission, St. Nicholas, down at around 33rd or 36th Avenue Southwest, somewhere around there. But anyway, our building is right across the street, and we have an extensive set of services. We begin, as in Judaism, our day begins with the evening. It was evening and it was morning, first day, it says Genesis. So we begin the day with Vespers, and our Vespers for Sunday, our Saturday evening is 5:30, and then we have our Sunday morning service, which includes the Eucharistic service, the liturgy, which begins roughly at 10 o'clock whenever we finish our morning service, which is over for us. And we usually have a prayer service on Wednesday mornings and various feast days, and we do have lots of those, and we'll talk about them briefly. And, of course, being a Christian church, we believe in the Trinity. We believe that the Son of God became incarnate, and that this happened. In Orthodoxy, we look at what you might have heard of as original sin, but a little bit differently from the rest of Christianity. We believe that the only one who truly exists, the only one who is alive by himself, because he has life in himself, is God. And when Adam disobeyed God, he turned away from him. And turning away from God means turning towards non-existence. So in that happening, Adam turned away, and there was a break created between God, who is uncreated, and us who are created. And we as created beings could not bridge that gap. So Christ had to, someone who was uncreated, so the second person of the Trinity, had to become human in order to bridge that gap, to bring us back into communion with God, because that is where life actually is. So we celebrate Christ as the incarnation. And we celebrate baptism where Christ identified himself, his baptism where he identified himself with humanity. He was baptized even though he had no sin, because he took upon himself all our shortcomings. And we bless the water on that day, and that brings me to the fact that we bless all sorts of things. We bless the entire creation. Orthodoxy has a blessing for farm animals, bees, candles, cars, houses. I don't have the book with me, but I can probably find a prayer for it if you name it. And you'll notice that that is in Russia, so the actual prayer is being done on a frozen lake. And you will actually have people, crosses thrown into the waters. And here we drink it by having a piece of string tied to it, but we actually do have people dive into a process, even in Russia, in that sort of environment. And of course, the ascension where Christ goes up to heaven, but the Feast of Feasts is the Feast of Pascha or Easter, the Feast of the Resurrection, because ultimately for us it is all about life, and death is our ultimate enemy, our ultimate foe, and in rising from the dead, Christ trampled death by death, and allows us to become one with Him, to be united with Him by His grace. And as we were created in the image and likeness of God, because of the resurrection, we are now able to not only be restored to that image and likeness of God to which we were created, but to become partakers of God, of course, here on earth in the sacrament of Holy Communion, but in the kingdom by being in His presence, by being in the light of God and the eternal joy of His kingdom. There would be more to say, of course. You can't summarize 2,000 years or 10,000 years in 7 minutes, but in a nutshell, this is a very brief introduction to the Orthodox Church.
Thank you, Father. Next, we have a teacher, Zuiko Redding, representing the Zen Buddhism.
Southeastern Nepal and northeastern India, and there was a young boy born in Lumbini, and his parents named him Siddhartha. His clan name was Gautama, and his family was quite powerful. But in his youth, he came into contact with the usual things that we all see: sickness, old age, death, and began to realize that this was the thing that we all had to face. So when he was about 29, he left his family, he left his heritage, and he went to seek how to deal with these things. And after about 6 years of studying with various holy people, doing various practices, he sat down under a tree and decided he wasn't going to get up until he got it. And he sat there for, we say, 7 days and 7 nights, and finally realized what we needed to do and how he needed to teach. And he went first to the city that's now called Varanasi in northeastern India and began his teaching career there. At age 36, he died at age 80 after nearly 40 years of teaching and preaching and establishing monasteries all over the curve of northern India. What did he teach? I think it just got passed out to you. I don't, of course, have time to really go through it all as thoroughly as
we need to for you to really understand, I think for you to really understand it. What he taught was what we call now the Four Noble Truths. First of all, that we all have this sense of lack, of things are just not right, for me, usually. And we separate ourselves away from the universe, from the rest of the world. It's me and everything else. And that may sound familiar. And this is where our troubles start, because we have ideas about what should be good for me, what I should have. And the world does not operate that way, and that's truth number 2, that we have this sense of longing because what we want and reality are two quite different things. The third noble truth is that this can be taken care of. The word, there's a lot of Sanskrit words on that handout, and one of them is nirodha, blowing out, that we can blow out this constant sense of separation, this constant sense of things are not right, and actually have peace in our lives, and better yet, be at peace with the universe, be integrated with all reality in a way that is wholesome for reality and for us. And the fourth noble truth is a set of, is a guide on how to live our lives so that we can have that kind of peace. And also, I'd like to pass out to you, you'll notice that the last one of those 8 things is meditation. And so I'd like to pass out another little folded document, which you may already have, and I'm not going to say anything about that. That's a guide to how to do what we call zazen. Zazen simply means sitting in meditation. And I thought you might enjoy taking that home and learning about it, maybe trying it out. Meditation is not a Buddhist practice, by the way. Many faiths practice meditation, and this particular meditation can be practiced as a Christian, as a Jew, as a Muslim, whoever. So, that is a little bit about our teaching. How did we get to Iowa? Might be the next thing to talk about. Buddhism began in this little backwater place in India 2,500 years ago. And after the Buddha's death, it began to spread down into southern India and across the entire Asian continent, all the way from the Mediterranean to the Pacific. I like to say that to the people who think that, well, Jesus, those lost years of Jesus' life, he was in India learning. And my thought is that he didn't need to go to India because Buddhist priests were already described in his time in the diaries of Greeks and Romans and Egyptians. So he could have stayed right at home and learned all he needed to know, I bet. So it spread all over Asia. Then, in the 19th century, Asians began coming to America. The first Japanese came to San Francisco in 1878. The Chinese preceded them by about 50 years. And I'm needing to position this microphone so that if I get a little too loud, rejoices with it. Those folks came to work in America, and they brought their priests, well, they sent for their priests. In the 50s and 60s, Americans began, non-Asian Americans began to be interested in practice, and they began to bring the practice through the entirety of the United States as they moved around, finding jobs, finding schools. And we established Cedar Rapids Zen Center in the year 2000. We've been here about 15 years now, and we're over on Beaver Avenue, right near the Episcopal Church and right near the Presbyterian Church and the Methodist Church. And I'll stop there.
Next we have Joseph representing Hinduism.
Hinduism. My sights and perceptions, how I understand it, how I present it. Hinduism is not a religion, it's a way of life. It is an amalgamation, conglomeration of values, philosophies, wisdom of all the ages, of ancient traditions, predominantly emerging from India. It is also called Sanatana Dharma. It is a Sanskrit word. You will often find words adapted from Sanskrit literature into Hindu tradition. It is the eternal teaching that comes from the texts that do not have a time bound to them. They are called Vedas, and they are passed on. That wisdom is passed on from the guru, the teacher, to the student by the word of mouth. It was not until very later in time that they were written out for a common man to study Hinduism. Hinduism, as I said, does not have a specific moment of origin. The reason we cannot trace a time that we can say, oh, it all started with a man or somebody. We cannot say that because there were, over the time, that tradition came into existence and full glory, if you will. This tradition, again, as I said, does not have a preceptor, neither a book. You cannot give a book and say, hey, everything about Hinduism is in this book. Coming to how it spread, and just as people travel all around the world, there were some people who were Hindus who traveled, came here in Iowa. They wanted to build a temple for communal worship, and that's how we have a temple in Cedar Rapids. So also in Des Moines and Fairfield. Hindus, predominantly every Hindu has a shrine, a private shrine in their home. That's where they worship and pray. And it's like a part of their everyday life. It's as if we brush, eat food, breathe air. It's just like that. Prayer, being devoted to the divine existence in all and in everything. That's how the Hindu leads his life. You will see a little bit richness in the word God and gods and goddesses. Hinduism is not just a monotheistic or a polytheistic or a pantheistic. You cannot put a word with Hinduism. The reason it is because there are multitudes of gods and goddesses that are worshipped, and there are yet some people worship in a Hindu trinity called Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma, who are the creators, sustainers, and the destroyers of this universe that we see. Yet, there are other people who believe in the universal consciousness that presides in every entity. Not just a human being, not just an animal. Everything that you see around you, it's full of divinity. It's full of absolute existence, absolute knowledge, and absolute bliss. Those are the core fundamentals of any divine existence that is around you. From the Vedas comes an inscription called "Truth is one, sages call it by many names." That one existence takes multiple manifestations and does mean differently. So we see so many gods, so many goddesses. It's the personalization that you see. But when you get to the generalization aspect, when you track it down to the source, it's one. And that's absolute existence. That's the divine consciousness. So Hindu tradition is very rich in culture. You see people dressing up in all the colors, wearing jewelry, enjoying life. And most popular customs, namaste, just bowing down to people and greeting the divine in them. That's one of the most popular customs that you would have seen. Touching feet of the elders, seeking for blessings, to do good at the right times. Having that wisdom, seeking for those blessings. Waving lamp and using bells, chanting prayers during worship. Invoking the presence of the divine to purify your mind. Meditation, yoga, as we see in Buddhism, and I'm sure in Islam also, there are, every tradition I'm sure has some pieces of meditation where you sit in solitude and think about the divine, think about God. Because we need to connect with the God. Then we will get that happiness. And yoga, of course, who doesn't know about yoga, right? All of the downward dog poses and all of that. Yeah, I came from Hinduism and say those Hindu traditions. If you see in the backdrop, what is happening is every person, every Hindu, every practitioner is trying to connect, or she's trying to connect the divine in every act. When you offer food, when you partake food, you are grateful for that food that God has provided. This doesn't stop just with everyday life. They have festivals, and most importantly, the festivals are reminders of expression of gratitude, and also reminders that good will always triumph. They're called Dashera, Diwali, Holi, Ugadi, you can see on this. What is happening here is that the life itself is celebrated when we bring the family and friends together. The fundamentals of Hinduism come back to these universal teachings called Vedanta. Again, emphasizing on that we are all divine, we have to realize the potential divinity in us. By doing karma, another Sanskrit word, what it is right action. Doing right at the right time and in the right way. In performing dharma, we all have duties. A student has a duty of learning. A householder has a duty of feeding his family, taking care of protecting his family. Likewise, every person in a different stage of life has duties. Those duties have to be practiced. In the light of truthfulness, non-violence, celibacy, austerity, perseverance, and keeping holy company. These all give us the foundation that we need to live our life successfully. And when I say successfully, in a blissful manner, to be happy, to be content. And the goal, of course, why does someone need to be happy at all? That the liberation, Hindu believes in the liberation from the cycle of birth and death, which of course a little bit here is, a Hindu believes in reincarnation, that one life is one. that again and again and try to get to that perfection, that God realization state, that being God state, the divinity. So that's why the cycle of rebirth. And then karma, the universal law of cause and effect, where what you sow, so shall you reap. The onus is on the person. You are responsible for your acts. It does not require any religious affiliation, as you see, we are talking about a philosophy. There is no conversion involved. Anyone who believes in universal existence of that divine consciousness and is ready to abide by taking ownership of his actions and do better, do good every day is a Hindu icon. The goal is one, that goal, the goal of being in a God-realized state, to be connected in the divine all the time. That goal, in order to achieve that, everyone is traveling on a different path. Everyone who has a faith is on a path. And all those paths merge in that goal. And I say that promotes harmony of religion. That promotes harmony throughout your life. So that's Hinduism in a nutshell. Thanks.
Thank you, Joseph. Next, we're going to have a little break. Need to a Bible break to visit the restroom real quick. Just need to stand and stretch and breathe, do a little yoga. You can do that.